implications for where we came from.
Mm-hmm.
And Lou Elizondo, I think one of the most interesting articles that's ever been written about Lou was a British GQ interview with him that ran.
That's fantastic. That brilliant.
I think it was late last year.
Yeah.
And he started talking about human genetics. And it's funny, I've got a paper somewhere here, which is called the WOW paper. And it's written by I think a mathematician somewhere in Eastern Europe. And he talks about the unlikelihood, based on statistical analysis, that the human genome evolved the way it did randomly. And essentially, he's done a statistical analysis of the human genome, and he sees far too many patterns in it to reach the conclusion that this could have occurred by simple evolutionary processes of natural selection. And it's a really fascinating paper. And frankly, it makes my head explode after about the first page. But I've put it by friends of mine who are equipped mentally and with their training to be able to read such papers. And they say the mathematics is sound, that it holds. And to me, it's more fascinating to me, the implications of not just the potential that we're talking about an advanced intelligence with advanced technology that may be operating on this planet. It could be that we're talking here about an intelligence that molded the development of humanity. As primitive apes. Like, I remember years ago when I was on the Sydney Morning Herald as a cub reporter, I met a molecular biologist, and we literally spent an afternoon talking, and I loved his brain. And I wrote a piece that I've still got a copy of it somewhere. But in the course of his descriptions of evolutionary biology and his account of the work that he was doing, he used the words cosmic shove. And he said that he couldn't explain the pace of the development of humans from primitive apes through to an advanced Homo sapiens with a forebrain that was capable of what our brains are capable of. He couldn't describe that with the levels of random mutation that you get with natural selection. And he said that the only way he could explain it was with a cosmic shove. And that's stuck in my brain all through my career. And so when you have people like Lou Elizondo, as he did, I think, in that GQ paper, talking about the possibility that whatever this is might have meddled with the human genome tens of thousands, millions of years ago, that's when it starts getting interesting for me. It really does raise quite fundamental questions of who we are, us human beings. Could we, the whole idea of God, maybe one of the reasons why the religious fundamentalists find, if they know the story, if they know the real story, find it so confronting, is because their idea of God is confounded by the simple realization that God is essentially an alien intelligence that hybridized us humans from apes. Could it be as simple as that? Could we be some elaborate science experiment? I don't think that's too confronting an idea. I mean, frankly, I'm grateful I'm no longer an ape. But, I think the interesting thing is that if there is an alien intelligence engaging with this planet, and seemingly benevolently in most cases, if it is, and this is the thought process that's going through my mind, if it does turn out to be true, as people like Elizondo and Gary Nolan and many others are suggesting, that there is some kind of intelligence operating on this planet that is non-human, why is it here? That's the bigger question. What's it doing here? And when you ask that question, that's why I felt that it was important to at least give voice to those experiences who talk about the abduction phenomenon, the cattle mutilation phenomenon, people who talk about and make extraordinary claims about being experimented upon by non-human intelligences. I'm not saying that's real, but if the implications are that we have a non-human intelligence on this planet, why would they be taking an interest in our genetics? Well, what's going on there? And why aren't we asking these questions? Frankly, I think that's the bigger issue. That yes, I take it as a given, frankly, that there is a non-human intelligence operating on this planet. I take it as a given that the United States knows a hell of a lot more than it's letting on. It's been sitting on it, and I don't quite know why it's been sitting on it. That's the thing that I find the hardest thing of all, is understanding why they've kept it so secret. But to me, the bigger question that I think we'll soon be addressing is, what are the implications for the origins of humanity that lie behind this discovery?
Yeah, this is something that I really do have a lot of invested interest in just contemplating and thinking about, is the just excessively novel evolutionary developmental process of the human species when you compare it to everything else on this planet. Everything else, maybe the only thing that I would set aside as a potential competitor is the mycelial network of fungal matrices that exist below our feet. I think there's maybe something to be said about a planetary neural network within that particular area of science. But in terms of a human species and comparing it to everything else that we see growing and developing, everything else is in this gradual, lazy, million to billion year slope through evolutionary time. And here we are, these weird little creatures that have these incredible minds, this weird access to a, what I like to kind of almost call a hyperdimensional realm, the imagination, the realm of the imagination, this non-physical space that seems to be infinite in proportions in some way, where we draw all of our information, we draw all of our inspiration, all of our innovation, our creativity. All the things that are around me right now have come from the mind of a human being, apart from these plants, of course. They've come from the mind of the planet, but everything that we're surrounded by has come from inside this mind, from this non-physical space. And we're also the only species on this planet that seems to have this weird incentive drive towards space, towards catapulting ourselves into the cosmos. And so I'm always wrestling with what exactly is the evolutionary driver within us at some fundamental level that's causing us to be in such a hyper accelerated form of development. Is it an alien species? Is it something else that maybe we've encountered in our ancestral history? Perhaps the magic mushroom theory holds some weight as to influencing our neural capabilities. But I think there could be a whole mess of different reasons why we are what we are. And I definitely do not exclude the possibility that we have had intelligences interact with us, especially when you just kind of take into account the theological architecture of our human species and the kind of early origin stories that we have from some of the earliest civilizations that we know of, the gods coming down from the skies and molding us in their image or molding us in their abilities. And these things shouldn't be ignored as just fairy tales when we have other things that are maybe suggesting that there is a mystery with our DNA.